Hello and welcome into the KE Report. Shad and Corey as your host, and today we're getting an update from Endeavour Silver. Endeavour is traded on the TSX under the ticker EDR and on the NYSE under the ticker EXK. We're joined today with the CEO and Director of Endeavour Silver, Dan Dickson. And Dan, great to get you back on the show. It's been a while since we've had an Endeavour update, and I think it'd be a nice place to start with just recapping how the year went for operations and financials in 2024. You had some news out that really recapped everything on March 11th, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but give us a snapshot of what the production profile looked like last year, what the financial health of the company was as you wrapped up 2024.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks a lot for having me back on. Appreciate you guys having us on. And I think to answer your question, 2024 was an okay year, probably mostly focused on our Terronera build. But of course, we do have our Guanacevi and Bolañitos assets that continue to produce for us. And when we originally guided 2024, we thought we'd do 9 million silver equivalent ounces, so almost 4.5 million ounces of silver, close to 40,000 ounces of gold. Ultimately, Bolañitos had a fantastic year in the sense that it's continued to find mine life. Gold prices went from basically 1,800 up to 2,700 at the end of last year. So when we started 2024, Bolañitos was going to make a little bit of cash. Now, if you use today's prices, or even 2,700 that we ended the year at, you're looking at $25 million of after-tax cash flow at Bolañitos. So that was great. And it's about 25-30% of our production. Guanacevi was doing extremely well, moving along the year extremely well. And probably remember we had a trunnion failure in August of 2024 that impacted our capacity at Guanacevi. And our team did a phenomenal job finding alternatives. We turned regrind mills into our primary mill. We were able to run about 600 tons per day from August till mid-December when we got back to 1,200 tons per day. So we revised guidance in August when we had that trunnion failure. We ended up producing 7.6 million silver equivalent ounces for the year. So we came in at the high range of our revised guidance. And the impact on ultimately costs meant less ounces produced. So our all-in sustaining costs were slightly higher than our original guidance. That was about $22 all in. We came about $23.88 for all-in sustaining costs last year, $12.98 for cash costs. So as I said on the outset, I think 2024 was okay. If we didn't have that trunnion failure, I think Guanacevi would have been great. And like I say, our team did a really good job to find alternatives, to get Guanacevi operating, of course, at a reduced capacity. But all in all, I think it ended up being a good year for our operating team. Our cash balance at the end of the year was $106 million. Our balance sheet's in good shape. We did pull $120 million of project loan finance for the Terronera build. Happy to discuss that further.
Let's go there because, look, everyone right now, I think, cares about seeing what's going to happen this year, what sort of growth you can factor into production to take advantage of these even higher silver prices. Terronera is that asset that you're building. You've released that you should have this commissioned in Q2 of this year. We just started Q2. How is Terronera running and what sort of guidance can you give us from it?
Yeah, well, let's step back there just on that. I mean, as you say, everybody's looking at Terronera. It is our crown jewel. It's really where the value of the company is sitting. I touched on Bolañitos doing $25 million of after-tax cash flow. Guanacevi on an annualized basis, after-tax cash flow is about $30 million. Terronera alone in itself will do about 100 to 150 million, just depending on the year and depending on what silver and gold prices you use. So Terronera eyes have been on that. At the end of the year, so at December 31st, we'd spent $302 million. We'd announced that we needed another 3 months to finish building it. Here we are in April 2025. I think we're coming into imminently turning on these filter presses, which is the bottleneck or the critical path to actual wet commissioning and then obviously ramp up. Our expectation is we're going to ramp up through Q2 and hopefully have commercial production early Q3. Again, for us, Terronera completely changes our company. On an annualized basis, it's 7 million silver equivalent ounces. So if you take our 8 million that we're guiding for Guanacevi and Bolañitos in 2025, you add on 7, that puts it at 15 million silver equivalent ounces, so almost doubles our production. But most importantly for Terronera, it cuts our cost profile in half, right? So because of the widths and the grades that we see at Terronera, ultimately the gold's going to pay for all the silver. So our cash costs effectively break even, and all the gold pays for that silver. All-in sustaining costs up in the low teens, $12, $13 from an all-in sustaining cost standpoint will really drive down our consolidated all-in sustaining costs once Terronera gets up and running.
Well, Dan, let's dive in just a little bit deeper because this is such a transformational project for the company. I mean, you're essentially doubling your production, halving your cost at that project. What does it do to the consolidated all-in sustaining cost when you add all three mines together? And then also give people a sense of the mine life as you see it, but also the potential to expand it.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about Terronera, and that's different, it's an epithermal vein system just like Guanacevi and Bolañitos. We've been at Guanacevi and Bolañitos for 20 years and 19 years respectively now. We've never had more than a 2-year reserve life. But with epithermal veins, you effectively go down to the next bead on the necklace. And as you mine, you replace those reserves that you've mined with converting resources into reserves and potential into resources. So we're happy at Terronera that we have a 10-year reserve life on the outset, but it's an epithermal vein system similar to Guanacevi and Bolañitos. We think we're going to be there 15 to 20, 25 years. Terronera itself, which is 90% of our resource at the outset here, is open along strike and to depth. In fact, some of our best grades and widest vein zones are at depth of the ore body right now. It doesn't end there. We have an inferred envelope around that, which would generate almost another 3 years. We just have to get to that area and drill it out. Ultimately, we can't do it from surface because it's just cost benefit. Once you have a 10-year mine life, it just makes sense that to build it and then get underground where we can drill it out a lot cheaper and go to depth a lot cheaper. So we'll do that in 2025 and 2026 with the expectation that Terronera itself goes to depth and bring that inferred resource into indicated. Then we can bring it into a mine plan under 43-101. And then again along strike, we have another vein called La Luz. It's a high-grade gold vein. It's also in our resource. It's in our mine plan. It's 10% of the resource, but it's also open along strike into depth. And we actually get into that resource in November of this year, so November of 2025. And same thing, our exploration team will, once we're in there for lower costs, we'll be able to drill that to depth and along strike with the same idea that we expect that to continue. Now, beyond that, we have 20,000 hectares at Terronera. Up until 2021, we were drilling other veins. We drilled 12 veins in the south. 5 of them actually had mineralization north of 400 grams silver equivalent, all the way up to a kilo. So those veins were looking a lot more like La Luz, a little skinnier, 2 meters in thickness, compared to where Terronera itself averages 5.5 meters thick over the 10-year mine life. And then strike length might not be as long. But once the mine starts operating, we get cash flow, we're going to take some of that cash flow, invest it back into exploration so we can prove that out. And because of the topography at Terronera, we don't have a lot of room to expand the mill. So right now we have a 2,000 ton per day mill. There is a little bit of expansion opportunity, but mostly what we're going to be looking at doing with our drill program is extending mine life. So as I said from the outset there, we'll be there 15, 20, 25 years. So we're extremely excited about what we have at Terronera. We're excited to get into operation this year, and we're excited to start showing the market what potential is there beyond the 10-year reserve life that we've proven out.
Yeah, it seems like so much of the focus is simply get that into production, start showing what sort of actual economics and cash flow that can generate on that front before you're in production or as you are ramping up here. Any major costs that are associated with this build that the company still needs to cover?
No, we're very close. Everything's been on site. In December, we had a bit of a hiccup in the fact that some steel wasn't on site that was expected to be on site, and it delayed us about a month. We actually gave everybody time off over the Christmas holidays, which is really standard in Mexico. So we shut down in 2 weeks, went back through all our inventories, made sure everything was on site, and we've actually made great progress over Q1 2025 with regards to the build. Recently, we put out an update on March 31st, put out a photo gallery on that update. Our filter presses are in place. We're just connecting electrical and piping. We expect to kind of start pre-commissioning the filter presses imminently. A tailings dam standpoint, we're up to elevation, so 1,200 meter mark, which is the elevation of life of mine tailings dam. Our upper platform, which is our crushing, grinding, and flotation facility, has gone through punch lists. We've been working on pre-commissioning and dry commissioning. We're relatively through that, just waiting for that lower platform, which is our concentrate filter, which is in pre-commissioning, and then our filter press, which is, like I say, it just needs to get hooked up. So we're eager to start running here quickly. All our equipment's on site. From a mine development standpoint, because of the 3-month delay, we've continued to do development underground, just opening up more stopes. We've got close to 40,000 tons sitting on surface of stockpile, some low grade, some medium grade, some high. We'll use a lot of that low grade and medium grade for the initial startup and make sure we work through the kinks and get the recoveries that we need. But like I say, we're very close here in early Q2 to get going here at Terronera.
Well, it's an exciting time for the company. It's an exciting milestone. And honestly, Dan, when we set this interview up, that was really where I was going to camp out, is just on the Terronera and the growth profile for the company. But you surprised me and surprised the market with news out on April the 1st. I didn't know if it was a joke or not, that you actually have now announced another acquisition. And this is of the Kolpa project in Peru. It's a epithermal deposit. It's polymetallics. You've got zinc and lead and copper there with silver reporting to it. It's still a silver dominant deposit, but it's a big acquisition for the company. It's a producing asset. You'll have 3 different concentrates here. Walk us through the transaction, how this deal is coming together, some of the details of the deal, and then also why the move into Peru.
Yeah, first of all, we're absolutely ecstatic to kind of be moving into Peru. We see Peru as a natural evolution for Endeavour. We've been in Mexico for 20 years. Mexico is obviously the #1 producer globally of silver. 25% of global production of silver comes from Mexico. Peru's 3rd. China's #2. We don't see ourselves moving to China. We're America focused. Our expertise is in Latin America. Obviously, we've had a footprint in Chile for some time looking for assets. In this case, with Minera Kolpa, it's an asset that was brought to us in early fall, late summer of 2024. Obviously, we're in the process of building Terronera, and we're really excited about what Terronera does for us and what it does for our shareholders and ultimately the share price. And I talked to our corporate development team when this came to us, like, yeah, it looks interesting. Let's go to site and try to find the red flags of why it isn't for us. And so we did that September and October, and ultimately kind of from initial visits came back and said, look, we can't really find an issue with this. We love the geology. We love the potential. They've grown the asset from 800 tons to 2,000 tons per day, close to 2,000 tons per day. They have an expansion permit that was submitted over a year ago to take it up to 2,500 tons per day. The mill's in good shape. And like I said right on the outset, the geology is great. And obviously the asset, it produces 5 million silver equivalent ounces per year. 40% of that comes from silver. It is very difficult to find primary silver mines. If you look across the public markets, there's about 5 or 6 of us that are primary silver producers before you get to all the juniors. And we just thought this was a great platform. The purchase price, we're paying $145 million. $65 million of that is paid in shares, Endeavour shares, and $80 million is paid in cash on closing. So we expect to close in 30 to 60 days. Because our balance sheet is in good shape, but we do have debt with Terronera, we wanted to make sure we get through the build of Terronera, and we want that protection. We were nervous about using cash off our balance sheet, even though it is in good shape. So ultimately, at Kolpa, the revenue breakdown is about 38% silver, 28% lead, 30% zinc, and 4% copper. We brought in a streaming group named Versamet Royalties. They're based here in Vancouver. They're buying the copper for $35 million. It gives them basically reserve life or historical resource life of that mine, which estimated using historical resources about 7 to 9 years. At that point, we deliver 6,000 pounds of copper. It steps down to 75%, and then there's another step down to 50% of the copper. The other way that we paid for the $80 million is we just did an offering, and we raised $45 million to make it $80 million. So we're not using any cash off our balance sheet to acquire Kolpa. But again, we're very excited with what Kolpa will do for Endeavour. Obviously, if we talked about what our production is this year without Terronera, 8 million to 9 million ounces, you add in Terronera, it takes you to 15, another 5 from Minera Kolpa. takes us to 20 million silver equivalent ounces on an annualized basis when this all closes and Terronera gets up and going. We've made huge growth over the last 3 to 4 years, and we're not done there. The reason why we like Colpa and adding cash flow is we do have our Pitarilla asset back in Mexico that's kind of been pushed along. We're spending $26 million there in 2025 because we want to take it to an economic study so we can start building Pitarilla if everything indicates that we can, hopefully late 2026, early 2027. So Colpa is a great fit right now for our company. We see it as a bolt-on, something that doesn't need capital infusion. It's got a great staff. They've got an office in Lima that reported to a public company that was based in Peru and to a fund. So they're used to monthly and quarterly reporting. We have some things that we think we can improve. Exploration, we're extremely excited about the opportunities at Colpa.
So overall then, Dan, should we expect Colpa, once this acquisition is closed, to improve the bottom line, improve the cash flow right away for the company, be really accretive in the immediate certainty?
Absolutely, absolutely. So ultimately, we're buying an operation that's been running for 10 years. It's grown from 800 tons to, I say, just shy of 2,000 tons per day. They want to expand to 2,500. We're telling them to take a break, hold on. It will do about $25 to $30 million of EBITDA, or that's what it did in 2024. We expect that to do the same in 2025 and beyond. The other thing that we find extremely exciting about Colpa is its potential underground. It's been an underground mine. They've stayed above the water table for cost purposes. They've got a 4-kilometer long strike. There's about 20 different veins within the area. They've had recent drill results that have been very interesting. So we expect to continue that, finding wider zones, higher grade, to bring that into the mine plan and hopefully grow the production there. But if we didn't change anything, it's got positive cash flow as it is today. Expect it for a considerable length of time.
Well, Dan, when you think about what we've already discussed here, the two workhorse mines in Mexico, Terronera coming up as a third giant mine, and now Colpa in the mix as another contributing bolt-on mine, it's going to be some transition from 2025 into 2026 until all of that production profile is operating on all cylinders. How would you classify 2025 as far as the balance of this year, what to expect for guidance versus looking into 2026 when everything is closer to that 20 million ounces?
Yeah, we've been very kind of careful around that of how we say that out to the market. Obviously, Guanacevi and Bolañitos, we have a lot of certainty, obviously a long history of operating there and cost history. And we put that guidance out in January on just Guanacevi and Bolañitos that it would do between the two 8 million silver equivalent ounces. All in sustaining costs, I believe we had $24 to $25, again, using $2,200 gold price. So obviously gold sitting above $3,000, that's $800 per ounce more of credit, and that would reduce. For Terronera in 2025, we haven't come out with 2025 guidance. Of course, if you take the 7 million silver equivalent ounces it does on an annualized basis, and we start up early Q3, expectations it would be 3 to 3.5 million silver equivalent ounces of production for 2025. And then Colpa, if you take what Colpa did last year of 5 million silver equivalent ounces, we take control probably early June, maybe late May. But you add 6 months, 7 months of that, another 2.5 to 3 million ounces. That's how you get to 2025. From a cost structure standpoint, it all depends on Terronera. We'll come out with that on the ramp up of Terronera of what we expect. Because it's really particular when it starts, when we get hit commercial production, if that's July or August, for total ounces, and that total ounces is going to drive that all-in sustaining cost per ounce, cost per ton. And I would caution the listeners in the fact that the first 6 months of operations won't be what we see in the feasibility study. Feasibility study was $88. We've seen inflation over the last 2 or 3 years since we put that feasibility study out. So that needs to get built in, and then ultimately the ramp up of any operation. But we do expect as we go forward, 2026, 27, to that line up to what our expectations are, and then ultimately free cash flow from Terronera at these prices well north of $100 million. Again, Colpa 2026, that would roll in a full year using the same look back to 2024, another 5 million ounces, hence getting to the 20 million silver equivalent ounces on an annualized basis. Just really hard for me to say for 2025 what will be, because it's so dependent on Terronera when that goes into commercial production, and ultimately when we close Colpa as a deal and we own 100% control.
So, Dan, as a big picture strategy here, look, as we've talked on our show a lot about how the gold stocks are really doing well, at least a large number of them, especially the producers. Silver stocks have broadly lagged, but so has silver, lagging the gold price.
Yep.
But the silver producers have been the big question mark in terms of why aren't they making more money at these higher prices? Then that could draw in some more market love. With Endeavour here, this recent acquisition, the building of Terronera, you're really, it sounds like, positioning yourself as one of the primary or leading silver producers here. Do you think that garners the market's attention in terms of more investment capital coming in?
No, I do. I'm an accountant by trade. I was CFO at Endeavour for 15 years. I mean, at the end of the day, I believe in rate of return, payback periods, and ultimately generating cash flow and earnings. Earnings is part of that. And I think for us, I can speak to us. I can't speak to all the other silver companies. I mean, 60% of our revenue comes from silver, 40% comes from gold. So we have benefited from that gold price. You're right, silver's lagged, but if you look through history, silver's always lagged, eventually catches up and overshoots gold. It's been trading as an industrial metal. The growth profile from a supply demand standpoint, the industrial demand has grown significantly on silver over the last 15 years. I think these higher prices are going to percolate its way through income statements and cash flow statements in 2025 and 2026. It's difficult in the silver space. They're generally smaller mines when you compare it to a gold mine, obviously base metal mines. So it's not easy, and it's not an excuse. It is what it is. There is only why there's so many, that scarcity of silver names out there. Obviously 5 or 6 that you can think of that are larger than us, and then we're about the only mid-tier right now. Like I say, I speak to Terronera, and with Terronera coming online, the scale and the cost profile it has, there's no reason why 2025 or 2026 that we're not going to have great earnings and really push that. And I hope that drives investment into the silver side of things. It is a small market, so you'll see a lot of torque when it does come in.
Well, Dan, just one more thing to put on people's horizon. You mentioned briefly the Pitarilla asset in Mexico. We've already covered 4 big projects here, and you've grown through both acquisition and development. But I don't want to leave out this massive project. You have Pitarilla and Parral waiting in the wings. So just maybe a quick statement about what the future looks like to continue to keep growing as a company.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought those up. There's been a lot going on at Endeavour. We picked up Pitarilla in 2022. We bought Parral in 2016. We have 60 million ounces to find at Parral. We liked it. We were moving both along parallel paths as far as which one was going to be our next asset. We like Parral, but we really like Pitarilla. And Pitarilla is one of the world's largest undeveloped silver deposits. It's 600 million ounces of silver plus zinc and lead. Everyone knows Pitarilla, or those that know about Pitarilla know it from its silver standard days. In 2012, they put out a feasibility study for a 30,000 ton per day operation producing, close to 12 to 14 million ounces of silver plus zinc and lead, a 20-year mine life. Silver had run to $50. They used $25 in that feasibility study. And like I say, people are very familiar with the open pit story on Pitarilla. But in 2009, SSR put out a pre-feasibility study on an underground operation. As we've talked about, Endeavour is an underground miner. That's what we know. We've been working at Pitarilla the last 2 years, like I say, in parallel with Parral. And we've really liked what we're seeing at Pitarilla. We put a 2-kilometer adit in there. We're right above a manto zone, which is about 7 million tons, grading 300 grams silver. There's 3 vein structures within 70 meters of each other, so very close underground. Those run north of 300, closer to 350 grams per ton, nice widths. We feel like for very little development, which, like I say, we've already got a 2-kilometer adit in there, we can get good volume and good tons. I always point to the 2009 pre-feasibility study that showed that if you could do 3,000 tons, you could get about 6 to 7 million ounces of silver plus zinc and lead out of there. It's a lot easier area to build a mine, but the underground's already been permitted. The plant's already been permitted. What needs permitting is a tailings dam. And In November of 2024, we said that we'd start some economic studies and engineering work to move Pitarilla forward. In January, we announced that we'd spend $26 million at Pitarilla. So clearly, we think it's a very bona fide asset that we hope we can move our engineers from Terronera, as we're completing it, over to Pitarilla and start that process. And hopefully in 2026, make a decision that it becomes our mine and one of our larger ones, and with a cost profile very similar to Terronera. So we're extremely excited about Pitarilla. It's our job this year as we integrate Colpa to continue to tell the market of what Pitarilla can mean for us. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because there is a lot going on here. We still have growth in front of us.
Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there for today because there's growth on every corner here with this company. Guanacevi, Bolañitos, Terronera being built, Colpa being acquired, Pitarilla waiting in the wings for development, and Parral right after that. So you're not a one-trick pony, you're a six-trick pony, and there's even other exploration projects that the company has. So a lot of news flow on tap from Endeavour Silver. And for those listening in, if you want to follow along with the news flow, it's probably going to be fast and furious over 2025 and moving into 2026. So click on the link down in the show notes. Takes you right over to their website, straight to the news section where you can sign up for updates or just follow along. Dan, thanks so much for the update. We'll try to get you on a little sooner next time so we don't have to cover so much in just one discussion, but a lot on the go with Endeavour Silver, and we sure appreciate you coming on the KE Report. Looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks for having me.